Hello everyone, we are continuing our 12 days of Christmas video countdown and our reflection on Isaiah chapter 9 verses 6 and 7. And now that we are only a few days away from Christmas, I'd like to remind you of something that we may not always realize, or something that may not be the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about this season. And that is how Christmas actually proves that God is a promise keeper. And before going into that further, I'd just like to share a little something. I have a 4-year-old nephew. His name is Lucas and he lives in Houston, Texas. And Lucas is at the age where he is learning how to read for the very first time. He is learning how to do basic math. And so my mom, being an Asian mom, signed him up for Kumon. But let's just say that doing Kumon worksheets, especially on the weekends, is not his most favorite thing to do. And so a couple months ago, John and I got a chance to go to Texas and visit our family, and I spent one afternoon just helping Lucas with his Kumon. And that day he was not having it. He was very distracted. I guess as a normal 4-year-old boy, all he wanted to do was to play with his toys and to watch Ryan on YouTube. Pretty much anything but Kumon. And so I was getting a little bit impatient, a little bit frustrated. And so without thinking too much into it, I said to him, "Hey Lucas, if you just do 2 more worksheets, I'm gonna take you to the store later and we're gonna get you a few more toys." And thankfully that worked, right? He became very motivated, very focused. He was working on the worksheets as fast as he possibly could. And 15-20 minutes passed by, and I was kind of just sitting in the background, kind of checking on his work, kind of thinking about a million other things. And as I noticed that he was kind of wrapping up, I grabbed his bag just to kind of check on how many worksheets were there left, like how much work still needed to be done. And all of a sudden he stopped me and he said, "Ii," which is another word for auntie in our language. He said, "Ii, you know that after this one, I'm done, right?" And I was taken aback and I just said, "Excuse me? What did you say?" And he was like, "Well, Ii, you said that if I did 2 more, I'd be done, and you were gonna take me to the store and get me more toys." And he said, "You made a promise, remember?" And I just laughed it off, and in my head I was like, of course he would remember. I was just kind of saying things to make sure he did what he was supposed to do. But this 4-year-old boy, in his innocence, he believed me. He trusted that, hey, my aunt would fulfill the promise that she made to me. And again, I didn't think too much about it and kind of laughed it off. And now a couple months passed by, and as I was kind of looking back on it and reflecting on it, I thought about how when you're 4 years old, it is very easy to believe. It is easy to trust that whatever someone bigger or someone older says to you, they would fulfill the things they said they were gonna do. But the older we get, the more things we have experienced, the more things we have seen, doesn't it become harder to believe? Most of us have probably experienced what it means to be let down, to be disappointed by broken promises. But today, I'd like to remind you that, hey, while all of that may be true, when it comes to God's promises, you and I have no reason not to trust. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 7 says, "The Messiah will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. So roughly about 1,000 years before Jesus was even born, God gave King David a big promise. And it was that he would establish his throne forever. Today, you and I know that Jesus actually belonged to the line of King David. And so the day Jesus was born, on Christmas Day, God began to fulfill that big promise he made to King David many, many years ago. And again, today I'd like to remind you that just as God kept his promise to King David, God is going to keep his promises to you and to me. And yes, he doesn't promise that life is always going to be easy, that we'll never face financial struggles, or that our family members will always be healthy forever. But he promises that, he would always be with us, that his grace is sufficient to carry us through anything. And most importantly, he promises that as long as you and I believe in his Son, we would have eternal life. And I think that is a promise that is worth holding on to. And it should be enough to give us hope in this season. So I just would like to wish you all a Merry Christmas. And I hope that you are enjoying the lights and the music and the time spent with your loved ones. But more than that, I pray that in this season, God reminds you that he is a promise keeper. Thank you, everyone.